This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening. Welcome to the Easthampton City Council meeting for Wednesday, May 3rd. The meeting tonight is being recorded and broadcast by eMedia on Charter Channel 193 and live streaming on their webpage, easthamptonmedia.org. Councilor participants in these meetings are gathering hybrid on their executive extended until March 2025, which allow us to do so. I remind both the member of the City Council and the public participating remote remain mute until recognized by the City Council President. Also, for the members of the public, please remove your camera for the duration of the meeting unless you are participating in this public speak time or public hearing. Thank you. Can you tell, it's not October, but we are wearing pink because we want to support someone that was diagnosed for breast cancer a week ago. I just want to show the you have us for whatever you need. Barbara.
Connie Denham.
Here.
Salem Derby.
Present.
Omar Gomez.
Here.
J.P. Kaczynski.
He's there.
He's there.
Yeah, he just left, but he'll be back.
He was here.
He just
He's there.
disappeared.
Dave Munier.
Here.
Tom Peake.
Here.
Brad Riley.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Owen Zarek.
Here.
Please stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will take a motion to approve the minutes for April 19.
so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for April 19. I'm going slow because I'm trying to see if JP show up. Any further discussion? Seeing none, for those in favor?
Aye.
How to do?
Oh, all right.
He's not
He's
there.
not here. Motion passes.
I abstain.
One abstention.
Yeah.
Public speak time. This is the opportunity to address the council regarding any topic not listed on the public hearing. You have 3 minutes to talk to the council. Please state your name and address for the record. You just go to the podium, man.
Hi, my name is Teresa Guerra of 33 Echo Lane. And I'm here today because there's been problems in the community where I live. And I'm going to read this thing that I have. Do you want me to hand it to you first and then read it, or
No, read it first.
Okay, I'll read it first, and then I'll give you the other information I have. Okay. The executive director is a sort of job that attracts bullies and those among us who lack empathy and a conscience. These people are successful because they are dealing with the weak and the vulnerable, the elderly and the poor, the marginalized being in no position to complain, and they are charming to their overseers. It's up to the board to peer through this facade and to restrain such detrimental and damaging behavior, and it is to the discredit of the EHA board that it has failed in this duty again and again and again. Despite a petition, and I have it here, that almost 80% of the residents where I live signed, backing Jack, our mail carrier, who had been defending us, the ED chose to attack him with a no trespass order, causing the post office to scramble to replace him, which they did. Our mail was never interrupted, yet the ED sent a notice claiming it was not so and declaring the disruption to be our carrier's fault. This was clearly an unconscionable lie. 2, I believe harassing a whistleblower to be a crime, is it not? This ED will stop at nothing because there is nothing to stop her, and not addressing any complaint is like supporting chickens in cages. Sure, they are safe with basic needs met, but they can't walk or move, and they squawk about it to no avail. And that's how we feel, and something has to be done about this board who is not overseeing this woman. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
And so, I will say one other thing. This petition that I mentioned was signed by 80% of the people where I live, says the Easthampton Housing Authority interfered with the delivery of our mail on April 14th. This was before all this started. Our mail carrier, Jack, has been fighting for us to expose a conspiracy of elder abuse and rampant self-dealing in the AHA. He has been subjected to harassment and accusation ever since. Please sign your name to support Jack as he battles his current injustice. And almost 80% of the people, and if you know people who live in a little place like that, it's hard to get, but they did. And so I just want to give you.
Just give it to Councilor Riley, and then we'll pass it to us.
Okay, that's
you, I
my
appreciate
statement,
it.
and this is what was sent to each household.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Jim O'Donnell, Cliffview Manor resident. I do not feel safe where I live.
Thank you. Anyone else? Julie?
Hi, thank you. Julie from Precinct 1. I just wanted to thank Councilor Zaret for all his efforts in the gun safety resolution. It did not go unnoticed, and it was greatly appreciated. And to you, Councilor Gomez, for reaching out to me and having a thoughtful discussion on revisiting it. It really meant a lot that you did that, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none. Communication from elected officials, boards and committee. Councilor Zaret.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to wish a very hearty thank you to the organizers and volunteers who came out on a drizzly Sunday for citywide cleanup. Thank you, Barbara, for organizing efforts to weed and mulch the rail trail and get out there on a Sunday, as well as to weed garden beds. Our ongoing cleanup effort and work around sustainability is dependent on volunteers from our residents to make it work. We pick up a ton of trash and added more nip bottles to the bin. We were able to incorporate work around biodiversity with removal of invasive plants from the bike path. A local farmer grew pollinator plants for volunteers that would be picked up from Easthampton Feed. Thank you all for your continued support of the city and for sustainability efforts in the city. On a more sobering note, my family and I were the targets of transphobic and anti-Semitic posts and comments this past weekend on social media. This is unfortunately a phenomenon that is not limited to me, but I can only speak to my own experience. As an elected official, this is an unfortunate part of the job, being targeted with a variety of negative remarks, slurs, and defamation. We've seen this recently with the members of our school committee around their deliberations. It isn't right, but it really is not right to target family members of these officials in ways that dox them, expose them, or intimidate them. Additionally, seeing racism, transphobia, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and other hate speech so casually used in our community without an understanding of the harm it causes is concerning. As a Jewish person, the anti-Semitic dog whistles and slurs are especially concerning in light of all-time highs in anti-Semitic incidents in our country and the Commonwealth. A Jewish person referred to as an interloper in this community has clear and obvious anti-Semitic overtones. The endorsement of Jewish people in our city being put in a place of being different as you people, meaning you Jews, is a clear signal that we are seen as distinctly different. Unfortunately, as a Jewish person living here, this is not the first time I've witnessed or experienced anti-Semitism up close. This comes for me on the heels of having been targeted for the last few years by a group of people because I had the courage to speak out against anti-Semitic remarks and have undergone a variety of retaliation for having done so, targeting me, my family, and my livelihood. They've employed classic anti-Semitic tropes and tactics against me simply for speaking against anti-Semitic remarks, not unlike many Jews before me. And so, this is how we enter Jewish American Heritage Month, a time to recognize the history and contributions of Jewish people in America. My people, the Jewish people, have endured similar campaigns for centuries. People have tried to destroy us, used public campaigns against us, and tried to erase us. But I'm a proud Jewish person, and just like my people have not been erased despite concerted efforts to do so, I will not be erased either. You cannot or will not erase me and my people. Racism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, all forms of hate have no place here or anywhere, And I encourage everyone here to listen and to see it and to speak out against it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Sarrett. Any other councilor? Seeing none. Mayor communication?
No, none.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We still have some minutes. Correspondence for announcement from the President, Vice President. Mr. Vice President, do you have anything?
No, Mr.
Before I go? So I have a few communications. The first one is this Saturday at 9 a.m. is the opening day for the Easthampton Little League at Nonoto Park. Please show up and support the little kids playing. That's always fun to watch. In another note, we have to do our duties as elected officials and to appoint 2 new members of the school committee. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process before telling the public the date and the school committee members and the city councilors. To replace school committee members, we have to do a joint committee meeting between the city councilors and the school committee members. They're still in the committee. We call that a convention, and that is going to happen soon. We already start working on the days. The days is going to be the 10th, May 10th at 7 p.m. The second meeting is going to be May 18th at 7:15 and May 31st at 6 p.m. At the first meeting, we're going to talk about the rules that we're going to follow for the next couple meetings. And those 2 positions is going to be available, is going to be open for everybody who is registered to vote, that is 18 years old or over, and Easthampton residents. The public, the community, will be allowed to bring their names with a cover letter to the clerk, to the city clerk, starting May 15.
No, ending. May 15.
No, sorry, ending May 15.
Through
because
May 15.
because we need it through the May 18th. So we starting Monday, if you want to start doing it, bring your name with a cover letter, and we will start the process. The meeting is going to be hybrid. It's going to be scheduled here. We're going to have room for all the councilors and the school committee and the members of the public that want to participate. Again, the process is going to be transparent, it's going to be public, and the votes are going to be public. We're going to do everything in front of the people like we're supposed to. Any councilor have any questions about the process now before we go?
Did you want to say what's going to happen on these 2 days?
Not yet, because
yet.
that we're going to determine
Oh, okay,
that at the first meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you. Councilor Kuczynski. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to preface the words you were saying with the reason why this is entering the joint convention, if I may, and that was that there were no other qualified candidates, that is, anyone who had received a certain number of votes at the last election. They would be the ones who would be automatically go to the school committee, and in past cases to the city council. But in this case, there was no eligible person. So hence the joint convention and the invite to everyone in the community to apply who was interested.
Thank you, Councilor Kuczynski. Thank you for the clarification. The other thing that I want to talk a little bit is about why some meetings are going to be at 7, 7:15, and 6 p.m. is because we're going to be 14 people, elected officials, and everybody have to be at the same time at the meeting. So that's why some of the meetings going to be at 7, one is going to be at 7:15, and the last one is going to be at 6. It's based on the ability of the councilors and the school committee members to be in person or remote, for those ones who are going to choose to participate hybrid. And that will be it. I will take a motion to, at least any other councilor have any questions? Seeing none, I will take a motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
So move second.
We have a motion and a second to open public hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
Connie Denham.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier. Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Motion passes. We have some supplemental appropriation. Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I begin with all of these, I wanted to give an update on where we are with our free cash and retained earnings. We received this from our auditor, Hadal Patel. After all of the free cash appropriations, including those that are in the packet to be dealt with at our next meeting, there will be $337,659 left in free cash. And in retained earnings, which is the enterprise free cash, so to speak, there will be $1,203,445 left after we've done our appropriations. The first appropriation is a $30,000 appropriation for the design and estimate to repair the town clock. This is something that I put forward. I'm going to read my justification. During the debate on this appropriation at the finance meeting, Councilor Denham indicated that I had a passion for this project, so I wondered why I feel this way. It is because I have a passion for the CPA and for this city, which I love. The Community Preservation Act was created by the legislature to fund projects in open space with recreation, affordable housing, and historic preservation that most communities would have difficulty funding in the normal course of budgeting. The CPA, in other words, was designed to preserve our communities, their open spaces from overdevelopment, their affordable housing, and their history seen in their historic structures. I have a passion for the CPA in all that it has done in my years as its chair. In historic preservation, I have a passion for Old Town Hall with the funding of major renovations to its lobby, its front doors, and now its second floor. I have a passion for the library building, trying to guarantee that when it's sold, it will not be torn down. And yes, after seeing the horrible shape of the clock, I want that history preserved. We own it, and it is the city's responsibility. I also have a passion for affordable housing. And I have a $750,000 transfer on the CPA agenda to be sent from our unrestricted account to the affordable housing set aside, which means that those funds can only be used for affordable housing. Each budget year, the law mandates that the city budget at least 10% into the 3 set-aside accounts, which guarantees that funds be available for each of the 3 tenants of the CPA. That essentially means that historic preservation funds or open space funds cannot be used or transferred for any other project, just like the affordable housing funds must be used for housing. The mayor graciously has granted free cash for your approval to fund the design portion because any use of CPA historic preservation funds requires Historic Commission recognition that the clock meets their standard. They require that specifics of how an architect proposes the renovation of the clock before that approval. When this project is estimated by this appropriation, I am hoping that we can fund the repair with historic preservation funds and grants. No funds dedicated to affordable housing or open space can be used. The appropriation before the council is only to find out what it will cost to have it repaired. I sincerely doubt it will be as high as $250,000. The city attorney determined that we do own the clock, and an agreement was signed so the city can avoid the anti-aid amendment, which would prohibit taxpayer funds from going to a church. The clock has not been maintained for 15 years. The city used to budget a clock keeper to repair it and keep it running, but that position was eliminated years ago. The bell has stopped ringing on the hour because swinging a heavy hammer and bell was causing structural damage to the steeple. A modern bell ringer is proposed along with a modern clock mechanism. Personally, it'd be nice to hear that bell again. This clock is quintessential New England. It is the prominent piece of our history, and to deny its repair now will most likely mean it will never be repaired. Councilors, all I ask is that you use this affordable appropriation to find out what it will cost to do this renovation. The project needed a standard bearer, or it would not see the light of day. I took up this cause because I have a dream that once Main Street, with all its proposed green spaces renovated, the clock will also be part of that historic renovation. Councilors, I humbly ask that you consider this request to keep our city moving forward while I preserve its history, with respect and gratitude. From the old guy, the historic old guy on the council. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but it's fairly straightforward. We have to do a estimate before the Historic Commission can grant any ability for the CPA to act on this. So That's just Mass General Law.
Any council have any questions or comment? Councilor Peak.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I think for Dan's comment, we had a bit of back and forth about this in finance. So I just want to make it clear that I have no objection to this appropriation. It was sort of an off-topic thing about, you know, what would happen and where the funds would come from to do any actual work. But, you know, I don't have a problem with doing the design work to figure out what it would cost, and then, you know, who knows what could come up in terms of, you know, funding sources in the future. But if we haven't done the work, then there's no way for us to even know. So I am in support of backing this.
Thank you, Councilor Peak. Any other councilor? Anyone from the public have any questions or comment about this appropriation? Can you please state your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
I am John Brunner. I'm on the Historical Commission. I want to thank you all for taking this up and considering all the variables. I want to mention that I don't speak for the commission, but I'm a member, so I can say there might not be consensus, but I'm not the only one that feels the way I do. So I think the thing that I would try to emphasize to everyone is that it seems to me there's a consensus about the clock. Everyone wants it to look good and function, and everyone on the Historic Commission agrees that it's a prime piece of important history and something that we think that has both an aesthetic appeal and a function. I know most of us have a means of telling the time by other methods, but I still think there's something important and definitely historical about preserving the function of the clock, that it should work, not just be a decoration. And I have never met anyone in this town who doesn't, you know, who would be satisfied to let it become decrepit, fall down. It's in the center of town. It's obviously a centerpiece. I think it ought to be an object of admiration for us and a point of pride. But I will say one of the things that happens, as I'm sure you're well aware, when you get a group of people together to debate these things, people really want to dot the I's and cross the T's. So the Commission's asked for some research to be done and to look into materials and a lot of the variables that you know, you could go this way or that way. And so we really hope that we'll get the support to pursue this all the way to its end, which I hope everyone would agree is a beautiful and functioning clock in the center of our town. Happy to answer any questions if there are any too.
Any council have any questions for you?
I could go on about it, but I suspect it might not be necessary. But I just want to really emphasize that there's a lot of support. There's no lack of support for fixing and improving the clock. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to figure out the best ways to do that and the most economical, the ones that are best both for the function but also for the economy of the town. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening. My name's Greg Rowland, 23 Summer Street in Easthampton. I sit on the CPA committee here, and I'm also a member of the Easthampton Congregational Church. So I'm speaking from a couple different perspectives here. I also am a big fan of history and was a history major when I was in college. I really value the history of our community and the work that John and the Historic Commission do here, and think it's of tremendous value. Easthampton Congregational Church is an open and affirming church here in town. It's accepting and tolerant of all people, all sexualities, and we are a community partner to the city and have been for years. We hosted or co-hosted that Envision Main Street event recently, and we sit at that prominent intersection in town, and hope to continue to partner, especially with the access to the clock, and to help enable in any way that we can the maintenance, the restoration of the clock to its former glory, I guess, maybe making it ring again. We had a very dedicated volunteer member who did get it going for 2020 for the turnover of the decade, and he is no longer in a physical condition to climb up that high, and so it's no longer ringing, and we would love to see the clock restored. Obviously, it's part of our building, so it reflects a little bit on us, the city clock, and it's just in a very prominent spot. I think it reflects on the entire community when it starts to be in disrepair a little bit. I do have, and I don't know, have you seen pictures of the clock?
Yes, we do.
Does anyone want to see the?
After you only have 43 seconds, just use it and then pass that to us.
We had them in.
Well, we have it.
We have it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it to them.
Would anyone like to see? I think
we got it.
the main thing that was striking about the expert photos when this volunteer brought in Verdun, who does clock towers, is like pieces that are kind of breaking off. So I think that's just a concern given safety. So, is it of public value and historic significance? Yes. Does it need to be attended to now because it's currently in disrepair? I would say yes. So is it a safety issue that should be resolved?
Thank you. Thank you. 3
The
minutes.
expert at Verdun thought so. Oh, is that the time?
Yep.
I'm out of time. I didn't know what that meant. So I thought I was being arrested. Anyhow, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your support.
Anyone else? Councilor Kwasinski, I saw your hand before. I just want to allow the public to participate. Is no one else you want to say something? Councilor?
Yes, Mr. President. I presume that since we're doing a study, and of course, I think anyone who comes to our city and goes through the center can't help but see the visual of the clock, and to have it running again certainly would be a benefit. To hear it again would be a great benefit also. I don't know if the study that we're talking about, if there's any possibility of making gradations of recommendations and estimates of cost. That would be, well, it's going to cost X to get it running again. It's going to cost, so that the clock piece, what's it called? the arm of the clock moves. And then if it's different, what the cost would be to actually get the mechanisms to ring again, and if there are various options. Is that what we're planning on doing with this study?
Councilor Rist?
Yes, exactly, Councilor Kwasinski. This will estimate and compare the cost of renovating to materials and the old clock mechanism, which is, I believe, was first installed in 1946, comparing it to using modern materials, which we hope would, for the exterior, might be non-biodegradable materials which could withstand climate change, heavy force winds, etc. Also, the mechanism would be a more modern mechanism, which would make sure the clock would run quite accurately and not need the maintenance that we haven't been able to do, which is a very big point of view for me. The city doesn't have the money to budget maintenance of this clock. It has proven that. And if we could reduce the need for maintenance on this clock by renovating it with more modern materials. But the Historic Commission wants to see a comparison of old versus new, to be simple. And that's what this RFP will do. The architect is going to make those kinds of comparisons and come up with estimates on both. If that answers your question.
I would say money well invested. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Councilor Denham.
I just want to thank everyone for their passion. Specifically, I know that this is something that Chair Rist is expressed a great deal of concern, care for, and I respect the historical desire to bring this clock back to life, essentially, right? So it's sitting there, and I'm not. It is not lost on me, and I feel the need to say that I think there's a lot of privilege that we have to be able to appropriate $30,000 for just research of a clock. And I spoke to a constituent, and I said, what do you think about the clock in town? And this is someone who has lived here for 20 years, and she turned, and she looked at me, and she said, "This is the first time I've ever thought about the clock, you asking me." And there are some people who care about it. There are some people who don't think about it. And that is what it is, right? But I do appreciate the historical significance of that. And I also just want to point out that we are very privileged to be able to spend $30,000 just to find out if we can repair a clock. And we live in a very economically diverse community. And there are people who are going to be asking us, why are you spending $30,000 to see if a clock works? And so I want to acknowledge those experiences.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilor? Councilor Rist?
Just to be clear, I wish we didn't have to spend this money, but Mass General Law requires any kind of renovation of this nature, regardless of its scale, to have an architect involved. So it is something that is not something that I'm asking as personally or that the city's asking. It's Mass General Law that requires it. So unfortunately, that's the way it goes for anything we do along these lines.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilor? Before taking the motion, I just want to say that I think, and I hear you, Councilor Denham, I think there's a legit concern and legit conversation with constituents, and I do agree too. The $30,000 when it's people's money is a lot of money. But I think it's we have two conversations. One is today, and one is going to be in the future. Because when we find out how much it's going to cost to repair, that's a completely different conversation. And we have to be ready for it, because I think it's going to be intense. The $30,000 today, the only question that I have is, and I know it's going to review all the clock, but part of that $30,000 is going to take a look of the structure that is holding it, because it doesn't make any sense to spend $30,000 to see what the clock needs, and then the structure is in bad shape. And I know we don't own it, but I think it should be something combined, because again, why are we going to spend $30,000 if we know the structure is really bad, and then we're not going to fix it? Because we don't own the property.
Yes, I think the architect can look at the structure easily, what's involved around the steeple, et cetera. That's not a lot of work. Secondly, you should know that project management is part of this, so that no staff member in the planning department has to manage this project when and if it is done. So the $30,000 goes a long way. It doesn't just do the design. It includes funds that we hope the architect will be on duty during its construction. So there's two elements to that. But yes, I would think that we would task the architect to make sure that if there's any structural deficiencies that the church needs to know about, we certainly want to know about it too. One of the reasons they don't swing the bell anymore is because there was damage happening. So that's one of the reasons that a proposed bell ringer, which doesn't slam the clock but just use solenoids to ring it, prevents that kind of structural damage. So
and for the benefit of the public, is normal the cities or towns are using people's money or city money to evaluate a structure that we don't own?
We wouldn't be repairing it.
No, I'm not saying that we're going to repair. I'd say if they're going to review the structure too, if that's something that is common or is something that we don't know.
I think it's just practical. I don't think there's much to the structure around the clock that would require too much evaluation. But I don't know. I can't answer that question. I think any city or town that does that is able to, I mean, a lot of clocks have been done in this manner in the Commonwealth, a lot of them, and I believe that's part of it, so.
Councilor Riley?
So I'm, as I'm just hearing everybody talk, I think, the question that comes up for me, and I'm not necessarily opposed to this, is I'm not opposed to voting yes on the $30,000. I would be hesitant if taxpayer money is also benefiting the church by doing some sort of an assessment that tells them things that need to be done. Because even if it's $10 worth of taxpayer effort, we need to, at least this is my philosophy, we need to make sure that no taxpayer money is spent on religious organizations, because religious organizations do not pay taxes. So I don't know what that looks like, but I would hate to see $30,000 being used to also assess the structure that is owned by the church and then saying, here is the work that the church needs to do. So I don't know if that's it's a cost sharing thing or whatever that looks like, but any insight you have?
Councilor Rist?
I apologize. I asked Greg Rowland, who just spoke, who is a member of the board, that very question during the Finance Committee meeting. He indicated to me that the church already has evaluated the structure, and it is in very good shape. Nod your head if I'm correct. I don't know if he's on the CPA, but in any case, he did tell me that I have an email to that effect, and I'll be happy to send it to you, and I'll ask Greg to also send anything along those lines. But I forgot about that. The structure is in good shape.
Okay.
Because I asked about that very question.
Okay.
The other thing to let you know, the anti-aid amendment does prevent us from using taxpayer monies to support the clock. Support nonprofits like churches, unless there is a valid public interest and you could defend that. But that's why we own the clock, so that we didn't have to defend that.
Okay.
But you could, and I'm not necessarily thinking we'll have to, because I do recall that the structure's in good shape.
Thank you. Any other councilor? I will take a motion. Councilor Rist?
Request is hereby removed for the following appropriation. Amount requested is $30,000 to be transferred from free cash, $30,000 to be transferred to town clock design account, $30,000. Design funding to estimate the final work cost for the work to repair the town clock owned by the city and located on the Easthampton Congregational Church. A design is required by Mass General Law prior to seeking CPA funding for the $200,000 to $250,000 repair project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $30,000 for the design of the work needs to repair the town clock of the Easthampton Congregational Church. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
Salem Derby?
Aye.
Omar Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Aye.
Dave Munier? Tom Peak?
Aye.
Brad Riley?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Owen Zaret?
Aye.
Connie Denham? Aye.
Motion passes. Councilor Rist?
Thank you. What's now, 38,000?
38,000.
Yes. We have a supplemental appropriation in front of us, $38,000. This is to investigate the Ferry Street parcel that we own and 2 samples at Millside Park. The Parks Department may use these parcels, may, I say, for parks. But there's also, as the mayor mentioned, other uses for these parcels. And there is a lot of coal ash that may be in this land and it has to be investigated before it can be used at all. I'm not sure who, maybe Greg or John Mason can fill us in further, if you would, Mr. President, but the Finance Committee approved this 3-0.
Mr. Mason, do you want to add something?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So this parcel is behind water and sewer off of Ferry Street. It is something our department has spent over $6,000 on so far out of our own money. We did a wetland delineation of this area to make sure what usable areas could be if there was ever use for it. And a review of about 800 pages of history regarding this location. It is a city-owned parcel. We've kind of taken the lead on this to see if it can be added to city inventory as usable space. Mayor Mike and Stuart, way back when, talked about maybe creating park space on this land as well. So this goes back a lot of decades of investigation to see, and not much was done on it. So we started this process at the end of last year to move forward on this and to finally get an answer on this property one way or the other. If it is usable space where potential park or amenities or any other special interest group that might be interested in it. So that's where we're at with this. This will cover soil sampling. They will be doing drill testing into the soil and getting back results. There is some coal ash to the north of this site. This parcel, I believe, is around 18 acres total. We're looking at about 4.5 acres of the 18-acre parcel. So we're kind of bordering the rail trail is where we're looking to get samplings in that general area.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. And for the public, Mr. Mason is the Park and Rec Director.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, don't worry. I got you. Any councilor have any questions?
Yes.
Councilor O'Reilly.
Just a really simple question. So I am not a born and raised resident of Easthampton. Is this coal ash that would be in the soil, is that from the mills when they were doing industrial work in the late 1800s, or how did it end up in the soil? And I guess just how much of a problem is this?
Mr. Mason, do you want to answer? We have Mr. Back here
Sure.
on the call too.
Yeah. So this is from the mills using it. They use it as a water filtration source back years and years ago. So it is the coal ash is connected with the mill work when they were operational years ago.
Okay. All right.
Any other councilor? Councilor Sarat?
Just to thank the Parks Department for putting this forward and the Finance Committee for considering it and recommending it. This is a really cool parcel. I've unfortunately read through all of the previous environmental studies, although they're kind of interesting. There's a lot of potential there, and having been involved with a few other projects with the city where we have a dearth of available park space or potential park space and open space, there's a lot of options for this, the ferry parcel. And then in regards to Millside Park, there's been various conversations about ways that park could be upgraded, some other amenities could be placed there. And I think rightfully so, both Mr. Mason and members of that commission raised some questions about the soil quality there. So it's just due diligence to make sure that we're doing the right thing if we choose to move forward with any changes there. So thank you, and looking forward to seeing those results.
Any other councilor? Anyone from the public? You have any questions or comment about this appropriation? City Planner Back?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks. I am Jeff Begg, I'm the city planner, and I just wanted to first start off by saying I strongly support this request. I appreciate the Parks Department taking it on, along with the other items that Mr. Mason mentioned. There's really just two things I just wanted to mention. The first one was that, as the city planner and as part of, of the team looking at this, currently it's a city-owned parcel, right? So it hasn't been taken over by Parks yet. I did communicate with the mayor, and I'm very grateful that she actually increased the amount of this request. So I think some of the documentation you may or may not have had, it was the soil testing was about $20,000, and the request is $38,000. So what the extra money is for if Parks Department is leading this, just for the Parks Department to be able to take another step after the soil tests are done. We just didn't want to, I don't think that learning about the soil quality is the end of the discussion. So what we have seen work really well is having some of these funds available to look at other feasibility elements, including conceptual designs. And then the best thing that we can do with this kind of project is try to get a cost estimate as part of that next step, and those are all requisite steps for potentially getting grant funds. So that extra $18,000, I just wanted to make sure that the city council was aware of that and make it clear that the Parks Department has access to that money to do those next steps. I attended the Parks Commission meeting. It seemed like that was a question. I just want to make sure everyone understands that should be baked into this. And then the other thing, just to recap, we've been looking at a skate park location since 2019. And over the course of that process, the planning department has looked at a bunch of different sites. We had hoped to locate it behind 50 Payson in the public safety complex, but that site had some issues. And after that, we looked at approximately 11 different properties for suitability, and we collectively, so there's a group of skateboarders who are looking at the sites, on behalf of the residents, and we circled back to Millside Park and brought that to the Parks Commission as sort of the preferred site. That was last June. And then in August is when the Parks Commission wanted to stop, evaluating Millside and look at this property for a potential skate park. So my request is just, as we go forward with the soil test, there's a next step to look at feasibility. For example, right now there's no vehicular access being discussed. I brought this to Mr. Mason and the Parks Commission, and so right now there's no way to get a vehicle over to that site. There's handicapped accessibility questions and just general access. So looking at that next step is really important, and I would just ask the City Council and the Parks Commission to keep our eye on the prize, which was looking for a site for the skate park. If this is not suitable for that, the skate park efforts have been in limbo for about 21 years since the city closed the last skate park. So just keeping the eye on the focus for the skate park, because it's kind of what brought the Parks Commission to look at this property. I'm just a little bit concerned that if we are just looking to increase inventory of other walking trails and things like that, the skate park was what really drove us to look at this location. So I think with that, I'll stop. Thank you very much. And as I said, I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Councilor Rist?
Just to be clear, we're voting on cleaning up this or checking this property. We are not voting on whether it's going to be used for any kind of park. We are voting on it because there could be other uses for this property, and its toxicity is important for the city to know. We made that clear at the Finance Committee, and I want the residents to know we're not voting on whether a new park is going into the Ferry Street location.
Thank you, Councilor Rist, for the clarification. I agree with that. Any other councilor? Councilor Munier.
I just wanted to say I'm glad that Jeff was able to clarify some things, because I was definitely not for this. I was thinking in my head from back in the day. I was an environmental chemist at Spectrum Analytical and Agawam before the recession of 2008. And I was in my head thinking, I could get this done for about 20 grand. What's this 38 deal, you know? That's a lot of money. So
You're
when he
hired.
came on and said $20,000, I said, yeah, that makes sense. And he was able to clarify. I appreciate him clarifying what that extra money was for.
Thank you. Any other councilor? Councilor Sarret.
Actually, I guess on those lines, let's say the soil testing gets done and gets deemed that it's the site's a non-starter. Does that, what happens to that extra 18? Can it be returned, or is it, because it's not going to necessarily be used for feasibility at that point? So it looks like Councilor Rist has an answer. So that's my only question is if there, and I appreciate the forward thinking in terms of baking in or earmarking that 18. I just want to know if we determine that the soil is contaminated or can't support, anything there, what happens to that additional money?
Councilor Rist.
First of all, anytime we appropriate funds, if the total amount isn't used, it just returns to free cash. And that's up to the mayor and her administration. Secondly, the mayor mentioned mitigation efforts, which include capping and things like that can be done. So I'm not sure, I'm not an engineer, but I think something can be done so this land can be used, depending on the level of toxicity. So she mentioned a couple of things that at the Finance Committee meeting could be done to mitigate the problem. So I'm hopeful that it can be used for something.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilor? Anyone from Councilor Kuczynski?
Thank you. It just was a quick question for Mr. Bagg. He had said that there's no access. Is there any wild guesses what it would cost to get access?
I think that's another conversation. We're
Well, for me, Mr. President, it matters because if it's going to cost lots of money and this will always be forest land, and it's prohibitive to have access of an ambulance, of some way to get to the site, by vehicle, by handicap access.
I do believe that.
I wouldn't be so excited to vote for this tonight.
Yeah, but I think that's another conversation because we are not voting. We are not voting to create a park. We're voting to do the samples for the environment to see if it's contaminated. Then the park on the city will decide what to do with that site. And at this moment, we don't know what the city is going to do in that property. So now, if we have access or parking, I think is irrelevant to the conversation because we are not talking about building anything there yet.
Yes. But if the results are that the property is clear, then we will be talking about that.
Exactly,
and if it costs $1 million to get access because of some topography reason, well.
But I agree. We will. This is not part of the conversation now. We're just going to do it for the environmental. Councilor Derby?
I don't know if it makes a difference, but I think maybe what City Planner Bagg said was just a little maybe misleading for the councilor because we have the bike trail being adjacent at the entrance of the Easthampton sewage treatment plant. There would be emergency access for vehicles. Not that we're talking about that right now, but hypothetically, emergency vehicle get onto the bike path and have access right there. So that it's this isn't something that is completely out of the realm of possibility, and we also have the sewage treatment plant, which is right adjacent to this as well. So I think that there are a couple of access points. So maybe we can put this discussion to bed.
Yes, and again, I will still think that will be the next conversation if is no contamination there or whatever the city decide what to do. But at the end, we don't know if the city decide they're going to build a park there. Maybe the mayor's administration will decide to do something else. And that will be another conversation. So I think that what we have in front of the council today is just to approve $38,000 to do an environmental review of the soil. That's what we have today. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. I saw Councilor Rist first and then Councilor Peak.
I was just going to mention that the mayor mentioned uses of this land that don't require the kind of access that a park would. I don't know if she wants to come up and restate those uses, but they were important to hear in the sense that this land can be used for things other than a park. I don't know, Madam Mayor, if you want to say anything about that.
But I think you state the mayor really well the day there was a meeting. That's what she said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's other uses that may not require.
And that's why I said that I don't think the conversation of access now is proper because it's not in front of us.
Right.
Councilor Peak.
Yeah, this is more of a pedantic thing than anything else, but I do think that there could be a way to ask the question that Councilor Kwasinski asked that I think is proper, which is just to confirm that this is a property that the city broadly believes is developable in the case that this comes through, because if not, then that is sort of a problem. My understanding of the parcel from its location is that the answer would be yes, but I do think just with all due respect, I do think that saying, well, hold up, is this a developable parcel before we vote on whether to research something is, at least in theory, a proper question to ask in this course, in my personal opinion.
I will disagree again, because I believe that what we have today, I believe it's two different conversations. What we have in our agenda today is if we want the city to pay $38,000 to see if that soil is contaminated. What happens in the future with that property is up to the mayor's administration, and if they have to have approval from the council, we will have that conversation. But what we have today is just to review if that land is contaminated, yes or no. What we use in the future is just speculations, and the access, what we're gonna do, or what we're gonna have in that property, I think we cannot say it today because we don't know if it's contaminated or not. So what we have in the agenda today, again, just to review if it's contaminated or not. What is gonna happen in the future, we don't know.
Sure, but I wouldn't personally want to spend money on researching the soil of an undevelopable parcel. So I do think it does play into the things. Now, again, my understanding is that in fact is, but I'm just getting pedantic here. Let's just go.
And I know I think I have an answer for that, because we're gonna spend $38,000. It's contaminated. The mayor at the finance committee that you were there, she said it's grants out there, especially for the federal government. That probably at the end is potential to do a developer there or do something, or a park or housing or I think the mayor mentioned there was in another city there was a dog park and a property similar to what we're having today. And again, I think it's part of the future. City planning back.
Thank you for acknowledging me at this point in your discussion. I mean, I didn't mean to offer any confusion by talking about the skate park. I do think that the exact conversation that you're having about, it's just the what if the soil is clean, what if the soil is dirty, to give the Parks Department that funds to take next steps and continue to just scope the next steps, even if it is to apply for grants that maybe the mayor mentioned. It all takes time and effort, and it usually takes a professional consultant to do that. So we just hope to support the Parks Department to give them that little bit of latitude to take a next step. Otherwise, if you do constrain it to just soil testing, there is no other next step that can happen without a little additional funds for the Parks Department to ask GZA to help us. So what would happen next? It's not necessarily determining the actual use, but just understanding the steps, and just having the funds available would help the Parks Department. So I think that was the idea of that extra, to just keep exploring the feasibility of doing anything.
Thank you. Any other councilor? Anyone from the public? They want to participate? Any questions? Any comments? Seeing none. Councilor Rist.
I move that the full council approve a supplemental appropriation Professional services for environmental review of soil sampling for Ferry Street parcel and 2 samples for Millside Park. The testing will determine the site is feasible for park space amenities. The amount requested is $38,000 to be transferred from free cash, $38,000 to be transferred to the FY23 Park Environmental Review and Soil Sampling. And I already stated the purpose.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $38,000 for the environmental review soil sampling on Ferry Street parcel and Millside Park. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Abstain.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Councilor Rist?
The next supplemental appropriation is end-of-year need for school payroll processing and city payroll processing to pay for increased fees. We have an external payroll processing company. The treasurer mentioned at the Finance Committee that we're going to bring this in-house, and is she still here? I would like you to confirm that if you could for us, because that's important. These fees are something that we've paid in the past.
Yes, there's an outside payroll company that does the final processing, the W-2s, the quarterly taxes, but with the new software.
For the record, your name and position.
We're treasurer. With the new software that hopefully we'll be getting, we'll be taking it back in-house. So they raised their fees about halfway through the year, so there wasn't enough in the budget.
So this is end-of-year budget shortfall. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if there's any.
Any councilor have any questions, comments? Anyone from the public have any comment or questions? Seeing none, Councilor Rist?
I move that the full council approve a supplemental appropriation. The amount requested is $6,000 to be transferred from free cash to be transferred to the school payroll processing account, $3,000, and the city payroll processing account, $3,000. For the following purpose the appropriation will be used to cover the shortfall anticipated for this fiscal year's budget in payroll processing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $6,000 to cover anticipated payroll processing shortfall for fiscal year 2023. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye. Motion passes. Councilor Rist?
So the next $49,000 is rather simple. We owe the IRS $49,000 because we were short on our school Medicare and city Medicare accounts. If you vote no, I intend to ask you to go to the IRS and explain yourself. Sorry, that was a little joke. Anyway, we voted 3-0 because I think we have to pay this. Emily Russo's on the call if anybody has any questions.
Any councilor have any question? I think this is really straightforward. Any questions from the councilors? Comments? See, now anyone from the public have any comment or questions? Seeing none, Councilor Rist.
I move the full council approve a supplemental appropriation of $49,000 to be transferred from free cash to be transferred to the school Medicare account, $13,000, and the city Medicare account, $36,000. The appropriation will be used to cover the Medicare matching share paid by the city to the IRS for employees for the rest of the fiscal year. There will not be enough in the budget to currently cover it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $49,000 to cover shortfall in Medicare matching share paid by the city. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Motion passes. Councilor Rist.
We have a $180,000 appropriation to cover some end-of-year budget shortfalls for the full-time regular payroll account, $100,000. And we also have overtime pay for the fire department, $80,000. A lot of this is due to negotiated contracts with the union. And Fire Chief Norris is here to expand on my remarks.
If that's possible.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. Again, this end of the year supplemental appropriation is being requested for 2 line items. The first one is for the permanent salaries. When this current fiscal year's budget was put forward, the collective bargaining agreement for the local firefighters union was expired, so they were in negotiations. So that's why we didn't have the exact number to put into the current year's fiscal budget. So that's what the salaries would go towards to make up that difference based on the negotiated contract. And then the $80,000 for the overtime. For this fiscal year, we were budgeted $140,000. That would bring it up to $220,000 for this current fiscal year. When you look at our 5-year averages and our trends, we've averaged over that 5-year period roughly around $235,000 per year. That covers all the shift vacancies due to vacations, family medical leaves, military deployments, things of that nature. So this will bring it to $220,000. We have had around that $15,000 savings. A lot of that is due to having the training captain during the daytime cover those shift vacancies, thereby negating the need to hire someone on overtime.
Any councilors have any questions, comments? Councilor Zarek?
Well, we discussed some of this in public safety, and I just ask this all the time because it's also just good for the public, but you have explained this in the past. Some of this is anticipated, correct? There's only some of the way that the budget's been arranged, you anticipate that you may have to come back for overtime. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, we purposely, obviously, hold it to the end of the fiscal year to make sure we find as many means as possible to minimize the amount being requested for that overtime line item.
Okay.
Any other councilors? Councilor Kuczynski?
Mr. President, I'd like to, if I may, congratulate the chief for saving some money from the 5-year average and for disclosing that information. I think it helps us to better understand that we're heading in the right direction in terms of the overtime budget. If there's approximately $15,000 savings over the 5-year average, that's quite an accomplishment given inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kuczynski. Any other councilors? Anyone from the public have any questions or comment about this appropriation? That's not here.
That was the mayor.
Okay. So what was that? Seeing none, Councilor Rest.
I move that the full council approve a supplemental appropriation. The amount requested is $180,000 to be transferred from free cash to be transferred to the full-time regular fire department payroll account, $100,000, and to the overtime payroll account for the fire department, $80,000. Requested for the following purpose: full-time regular fund contractual requirements for salaries, overtime pay, fund difference, and shift overtime for this fiscal year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $180,000 to cover fire department regular and overtime pay for fiscal year 2023. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Motion passes. Councilor Rest.
The last supplemental appropriation is a $98,400 appropriation for overtime end-of-year needs for the police department. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Alberti, but this is the first time his department has had to come to us for overtime deficiencies, and one of the main reasons is the Police Reform Act eliminated special police officers, which were part-time officers that filled in when shifts were short due to vacations, injuries, or whatever, and that unintended consequence meant that we have to pay a lot more money per hour for regular officers to cover shifts in overtime. There's also the fact that they had a rather large overtime requirement for one of the first times we've had a homicide in our city. So those kinds of things built up, and I'd like to, Mr. President, if you would, have the chief expand on my remarks.
Only Chief.
Good evening, Council. Bob Alberti, your police chief. The chair is quite correct with the advent of the police reform bill and the standing up of the Post Commission. One of the unintended consequences that I don't think the legislatures really gave a whole lot of thought to was the elimination of part-time police officers. and it affects both Western Mass and Cape and the Islands significantly because we rely on part-time police officers and specials. The Cape in particular relies on summer help when their population swells, and we rely on our specials to be our bench that we hire our full-time police officers from, and they save us a tremendous amount of money in overtime as we pay them $18 an hour versus overtime for a full-time police officer. So we actually have a meeting, the Mass Chiefs have a meeting next week in Western Mass with the legislature around this exact same topic. But we're also told by our lobbyists that the legislature doesn't have the appetite to reevaluate the police reform bill for at least 5 years out. So it's going to be a significant issue for us. It's going to be a significant overtime adjustment for our police department in the city. And I've been stating this over and over again for the last couple of years, seeing this come down the pike. And essentially, here we are. And it's going to affect recruitment because we don't have the specials that we get to know, and they get to know us, and they go through our full FTO program. So it's definitely going to cause some headaches for the police department and certainly the city financially.
Any councilor have any questions or comment? Councilor Sarrett?
Just in the interest of equity to both chiefs. So it looks to me like, again, that this is partially contractual obligation. Some of it is anticipated overtime, but where you can't anticipate exactly what that overtime is going to be, correct?
Correct. Very much like Chief Norris just stated, we were allocated $140,000 in overtime, and our overtime budget usually hovers around $225,000 at the end of the year. But very much like Chief Norris, we try very hard to drive ours down by leaving beats open, not using training overtime. We'll have officers swap off beats if we have a full shift that they can go do training without backfilling overtime. So we work very hard about keeping our overtime down. But there are some things that are just out of our control, very much like the recent homicide that we had. Once that happens, there's not a lot. The detectives are working around the clock on those cases, and unfortunately, it's the second one here in my career. I was hoping to get out with only one, but again, here we are. And the overtime itself is already, the regular overtime for just beats alone is already in a deficit. So, but yes, and the other thing I said during finance was with regard to the specials, it's the equivalent of the legislature saying we are no longer going to have call firemen anymore. Every fire department in the Commonwealth has to have all full-time firemen. We're going to eliminate call firemen. And you could see what the impact of that would have on Western Mass cities and towns. And but it's a good analogy because it kind of puts things in perspective.
Okay. Any other concern? Anyone from the public have any questions or comment about this appropriation? Seeing none, Councilor Rist.
I move the full council approve a supplemental appropriation of $98,400 to be transferred from free cash, to be transferred to the police overtime account, $40,000. The police overtime investigative account, $20,000. The police overtime training account, $10,000. The police incentive account, $15,400. The police EMT incentive, $13,000. For the following purpose, to cover a shortfall in fiscal year 23 overtime due to a lack of special police officers available for shift coverage, unanticipated investigated overtime costs related to the March 14th homicide, and firearms and CPR training overtime costs in April and May 2023. And also to cover additional educational incentive pay and additional EMT incentive costs for remainder of FY23. Somebody say second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $98,400 to cover the police department overtime incentive and police EMT incentive. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Motion passes. Councilor Sarrett.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. President. We have two items here for amendments to the city ordinances, traffic rules and order. The first is a request to add some no parking corridors on East Street. The new Piscomic Trust parking lot, the Mount Tron Trailhead, has been an incredibly successful amenity and addition to our city, but with that has come a few issues regarding parking, both in terms of how it's presented a potential nuisance to abutting parcels and people parking there or on lawns, as well as a direct safety concern. So through collaboration of multiple stakeholders, planning, DPW, police, and others, we had a discussion and proposed a kind of corridor of no parking, both from leading southwesterly from that parking lot as well as northeasterly. There are other issues that need to be addressed around this area, and that's why we have kept the item in public safety, but for now we are just presenting this no parking area. And I think people involved with this that could probably speak to this are, in no particular order, are the planner, DPW director, as well as the chief of police.
Mr. Nutman, want to add something? No? Police chief?
I'm here for support.
Okay. Mr. Bag?
He'll say something.
Hi, everybody. I just want to really thank DPW Director Nuttleman and Chief Alberti. They have been a good partner in looking at this as we see this trail get utilized. I think it's a relatively occasional situation where people have been parking on the shoulder of the road. Greg and his team were really quick to deploy some boulders in coordination with the property owner most closely adjacent to the trailhead. They wanted to have that kind of deployed and test it. I think Chief Alberti and I have spoken where if the police department does get a complaint or come across a car that is parked on the shoulder, as of right now, they cannot really ticket them because we do not have this designated no parking area. And so that was really the primary objective. The second objective was that the homeowner most adjacent really has been cooperative and a good partner. And they basically asked to put up an official no parking sign. And while that sounds really simple, we needed to make this ordinance amendment to do that. And I think in doing this, we stretched it just through, there's a curve in that section of East Street. And so this addresses that. We do think that some of the spillover is going to Underwood, but over time, I think as the trail becomes more used, people will be more accustomed, and people are a bit of creatures of habit. So most people will listen to signs and they'll read them and they will not park on the shoulder. And so this was all belts and suspenders kind of thing to make sure that if need be, people could be ticketed if they are parking there.
Thank you. Any counselor? Councilor Sarek?
I'd be remiss if I didn't add that the committee voted to recommend this to the full council 3-0. And the other thing that is important there that the planner did mention is that unique S-curve shape as you are approaching northeasterly is quite dangerous with cars parked in the way, both in terms of how they narrow the road, but also create visual obstructions. So that's all.
Thank you. Any other counselor?
I just have a
Counselor
question.
Denham?
And this may not be able to be talked about right now. I agree, safety is important. Where are people going to park otherwise? And I've knocked on doors on that street, and it's not particularly safe. And so now we're creating, if people want to go for a hike, they're going to go for a hike, and they're just going to park farther away, and thus they're going to commute on a very dangerous road a longer distance. So was there a conversation about that?
I'm so sorry.
There absolutely was. And that's why it's still in committee, is the next steps, which are much harder to try to figure out. It's pretty easy to delineate a no parking area, but these other issues, which are potentially more important, are more conversations we need to have. And so that's still there, and there's already been some input from the planner. But yes, this will continue to be discussed in committee. Good question.
Any other concern? I have a question. I don't know if this happened at the police safety. If we pass this tonight, and I know the police department have to do their job, it's going to be a period of time, a week or 2 weeks, the people who park in this section, they're going to get a warning instead of parking. That way they know that now is a no zone for parking in the area.
Yeah, for any enforcement, particularly parking, our objective is to educate. So there'll be a significant educational piece of warnings, verbal warnings, even written warnings. Repeat offenders, maybe not so much. But yeah, the education's a significant piece, particularly when we're establishing a new no parking area. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone from the public want to participate in this new ordinance? We have Linda.
Hi, I live at 126 East Street, just a few houses down from the new trail. And what happens currently, as we stated, there's not enough parking for all of the people that want to use the trail. People park down at the Pascomic Memorial and walk, I don't know, it's probably a quarter mile to the trail, including on that S curve. So there's also a problem of pedestrian traffic. I'm sure Chief Alberti can attest to how many accidents are on this small stretch of street. I would say probably 3 a year. I've lived here for 32 years. So I'm really concerned about the pedestrians. I entirely support the no parking zone. But like other people have stated, there's other issues to this. I'm really concerned somebody's going to get killed in front of my house. So just food for thought.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Alexandra?
Hi, good evening. I am a property owner on that same stretch of East Street and just wanted to provide enthusiastic support for this measure. I'm concerned about the same things that Linda is, especially folks that are parking up the road and walking that very dangerous stretch of East Street with their pets and their children. I think this is a good first step in encouraging folks to await a spot in the lot or move to Underwood instead of parking on the street in that section. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other councilors before we take the motion? Councilor Derby.
I think that the issues that were brought up were discussed in committee, and I think that there's going to be, as Councilor Zaret said, there's going to be some further steps that we're going to have to take. I think it would be great to be able to educate people that Underwood Ave does have space for some overflow, and I just don't think necessarily people know about it. It's a much safer place to park than parking on East Street and walking without a sidewalk, and so that's going to be part of our next charge, but it's on our radar.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kuczynski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hearing everyone speak about this, especially the issue about parking in the Pascomic Conservation Area location and then walking a quarter mile around an S-curve, maybe with 1 or 2 or 3 children. Sure, going to Underwood would be a better solution. Underwood, however, is not as the access to the park area seems further away. It's not quite as attractive. So there's lots of we've created a really lovely park. It's gorgeous. Unfortunately, there are no easy answers here, and I think either way, it will be a hazard unless folks become convinced that they will either find the times to come to the park, that the parking is available, or are willing to go to Underwood. I don't think we have any easy answers. Either way isn't good. I do hope that other solutions become available with this further study.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Seeing none, Councilor Sarek.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to make an amendment to Section 1-24 of the City Ordinances, Traffic Rules and Orders, Appendix A, parking prohibited in certain streets at all time, to add East Street both sides for 1,300 feet southwesterly from Pascomic Trust parking lot and northeasterly to the northeastern boundary of 99 East Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend Section 1-24. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Motion passes. Councilor Sarek.
This is another addition to City Ordinance Traffic Rules and Orders, actually adding a new section, Article Roman numeral 10, school zones. Apparently, the DPW was searching for a grant to be able to obtain some signage around Mountain View School, and the requirement for that grant was that we needed to have a school zone, and lo and behold, we thought we had one for the former White Brook Middle School, but we didn't. And so we need to establish one, for not just for the sake of the grant, but for also the sake of enforcement, et cetera. And so the language is basically there. The committee recommended this 3-0. There was some discussion about how we would express the hours. Again, it's there in the language, basically anticipated hours where children need to access the school, as well as if there's half days or something, there would be flashing lights. There was a conversation about it, whether the school zone would include the school driveway, but the state language is very clear about roads that directly abut but don't actually enter the school grounds. So we will continue to have a conversation about that in committee. And I know that the directors here could probably explain this way better than I am. So with your permission, Mr. President, may I invite Director Nettleman?
Good evening, everyone. Greg Nuttleman, Director of Public Works for the city. An opportunity came across my desk several months ago to apply for a combination dynamic speed feedback and school zone speed limit sign assemblies for the school zone on Park Street. I applied for it. We were awarded 2 signs free of charge to the city. However, in the agreement with the state to accept those signs, we have to have an officially codified school zone, 850 feet in each direction from the school driveway, and supply the state with some of the speed data that we're going to be able, that the new signs will actually collect, that we have to send back to them. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We looked and didn't find anywhere where the council had ever officially codified a school zone for the old White Brook Middle School. So appreciate everyone, councilors there taking this forward, and that will help me get this through. So it's going to be nice to have those signs out there. Any new technology is a lot brighter. They'll tell people to slow down, give the speed right. Current, it'll display the school zone speed and then current speed, so and collect the data. So great opportunity for us to get some good technology out there with no cost. So and our crew will install them ourselves. Another thing, we have to have them in by the start of the 23-24 school year. So.
Any councilor have any questions? Councilor Munier?
Thank you, Mr. President. So did you say 850 feet each direction from the driveway of that school?
Yep.
That's pretty cool. So did I hear that correct? Like it wasn't a school zone before?
Well, it was posted as a school zone. However, we couldn't find language where it was ever officially codified in the city ordinances.
It's interesting.
Any other councilor? Oh, you have another question? Any other councilor? Seeing none, anyone from the public have any questions or comment? Seeing none, going back to the councilors before we take the motion. Take the motion, Councilor Sarat.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for the questions about the driveway. That will, like I said, that will continue to get discussed in committee. So at this time, I'd like to make another amendment to City Ordinances, Traffic Rules and Orders, Appendix A, to add new Article X, Roman numeral 10. School zones, Section 1-88, Mountain View School, from the center of the roundabout at the school entrance on Park Street and extending a distance of 850 feet north and south along Park Street, and also extended from the center of the roundabout 850 feet northwesterly on South Street to include the hours from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. when school is in session or lights are flashing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to add the new Article X, School Zone Section 1-88. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We'll take a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close public hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
Connie Denham. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier. Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Motion passes. The public hearing is officially closed. Report of Standing Committee, Finance, Councilor Rest.
Yes, Mr. President, we do have a number of meetings coming up before our next council meeting. On Wednesday, May 10th, the meeting will be at 5:30 to deal with the new business that we are going to send to the Finance Committee this evening. Also on May 11th, May 15th, we are having two Finance Committee meetings for the beginning of our budget discussions. And unfortunately, I'm missing the page that told me what those were. I wanted to announce them again. What the heck? Not that one. All right, well, anyway, I believe it's in the agenda. I apologize. Wait a minute.
The 15.
It's the 11th, I believe, is Public Works, not Public Works, I'm not going to state. You need to look up online, and it's also posted what the, found it. May 11th, Public Works, Enterprise, Cultural and Recreation. May 15th, Public Safety and Human Services. Those will be hybrid meetings in Conference Room 1, starting at 5:15, and we will be starting our look at the budget for these particular departments. Also, I want to announce that the May 31st final finance votes has been changed to May 30th due to the fact that we need to have a meeting in which President Gomez was able to get all of the people from the school committee and our council together, which is very difficult. That's 14 people. So that meeting is on May 31st. So we're going to have the final votes for the budget on the 30th, which is a Tuesday. So please make note of that. And that is all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Rest. Public Safety, Councilor Sarat.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a particular report. I have tentatively scheduled a meeting on May 25th. That's a Thursday at 6 p.m. I just need to talk to one more member of the committee about that, and we'll go through some of the items that we discussed tonight there. And thus concludes.
Thank you, Councilor Sarat. Appointment, Councilor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. President. The appointment committee has not met since our last meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for May 11th at 6 p.m. and it'll be in Conference Room 2, which is right here behind City Council chambers, and thus concludes.
Thank you, Councilor. Ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ordinance Committee will be meeting Tuesday, May 9th at 6 p.m. And we will be discussing the classification and pay plan issue on our agenda, as well as talking about the LED sign electronic messaging center ordinance. We did meet with the police chief last week to talk about the civilian traffic control monitors, and I think that we are very close to taking a vote on that, so that should be coming up soon. Thus concludes.
Thank you, Councilor. Property, Councilor Kwasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Property Committee will meet tomorrow at 6 p.m. We had a meeting last week, discussed the elementary school reuse evaluation report, and we'll be developing our recommendation for the council for a public hearing on Wednesday, May 17 at 6:15 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President. This concludes.
Thank you, Councilor. And that meeting is going to be remote, right?
That is a remote meeting. That's correct.
Thank you. Rules, Councilor Rist.
Yes, the Rules and Government Relations Committee met last evening. We concluded our work on the charter changes, and they have been sent to the city attorney for review and have come back to us, and we now have a draft that we'll be sending to the full council for review. They will be sent to you immediately. I would like to make a motion to set a public hearing for the charter changes we are recommending for Section 210 and also the mayoral appointments section, the mayoral vacancy section, I lost my train of thought, for that's Section 3.9 for May 17th in these chambers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to set a public hearing in this chamber on May 17th at 6:15. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye.
Motion passes. Councilor Rist.
We also approved a new Rule 5F, public comment submitted by President Gomez. That I will bring forward after you all review it for the next meeting. It doesn't require, of course, any public hearing. Just to say, the discussion was centered on the new Supreme Court decision, which entered into what free speech means, and that we should all recognize that we need a thick skin if we're going to be a public official. That's all I'm going to say right now. We'll get into it at the next meeting.
How thick?
Really. That concludes. Thank you, Councilor Rist. New business, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a City Council President appointment to the Bees Committee, which I request to be sent to the Appointment Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send to the Appointments Committee the appointment of the Councilor Sarek to the Bees Committee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby. Aye.
I didn't vote, but I say aye.
I think.
Thank you.
A motion passes.
Oh, did I skip you?
Yes.
Sorry.
Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also have a proposed resolution against anti-Semitism from Councilor Zaret, and I would like to move to send that to Rules.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send the resolution to the Rules Committee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara?
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye. Motion passes. Councilor Rist.
I'm going to make a first reading of a number of financial matters. First is an interdepartment transfer. The amount requested is $3,500 to be transferred from the Veterans Cash Benefit, $3,500 to be transferred to the Veterans Part-Time Clerical Account, $3,500. The amount requested is for the following purpose: to fund temporary clerical position in order to train and prepare future veterans agent prior to creation of Easthampton Veterans Service Office. The next is also an interdepartmental transfer. The amount requested is $4,000 to be transferred from Veterans Cash Benefit, $4,000 to be transferred to Veterans Supplies and Materials for the purpose of create and purchase educational and promotional items for the Easthampton Veterans Wellness Coalition in support of events that will begin in June. The next is a supplemental appropriation. The amount requested is $2,603.13 to be transferred from free cash to be transferred to the FY19 MassWorks Ferry Street Project, $2,603.13. The Ferry Street Project expenses not reimbursed through MassWorks infrastructural grant. The next is a supplemental appropriation of $11,528.61 to be transferred from free cash to be transferred to Bulletproof Vest account, $11,177.61. Police medical expenses, $351 for the following purpose: to cover a deficit in Bulletproof Vest grant and to pay the FY21 IOD medical bill. The next is supplemental appropriation of $125,000 to be transferred from enterprise retained earnings, $125,000 to be transferred to the wastewater treatment plant maintenance account, $125,000. For the purpose of the appropriation, will provide funding to support NPDES permit compliance assistance as well as various maintenance and repair projects at the Easthampton wastewater treatment plant and related infrastructure. The next is a supplemental appropriation of $324,100 to be transferred from free cash, $324,100 to be transferred to the following accounts: the snow overtime account, $4,770, the snow equipment rental account, $99,740, the snow chemical account, $13,000, the salt account, $160,390, and the school plowing account, $46,200. For the following purpose, the funding will cover the annual deficit in the DPW snow removal budget for FY 2023. The next,
Oh, sorry.
Two more.
There's a pregnant pause, I'm sorry.
the amount I didn't even make a motion. The amount requested, $12,000 to be transferred from free cash, $12,000 to be transferred to trash removal for the schools, $8,300, and trash removal for town buildings, $3,700. For the purpose of the fund increased trash pickup costs at municipal and school department buildings. The next is a supplemental appropriation, $11,345.08 from enterprise retained earnings to be transferred to the fiscal year 21 MVP Climate Resiliency account, $11,345.08 for the following purpose: to cover the deficit in-kind match staff time for the FY21 MVP Action Grant for green infrastructure planning and resiliency design for Cherry Street. Mr. President, I move that the interdepartment transfers and supplemental appropriations, as I mentioned, will be sent to Finance Committee for review, as well as a public hearing be set for May 17th in these chambers.
Second to all.
We have a motion and a second to send to the Finance Committee to interdepartmental transfer and to seek supplemental appropriation and to schedule a public hearing for May 17 at 6:15 at this chamber. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn, Barbara.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley. Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Connie Denham. Salem Derby.
Aye.
Omar Gomez. JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
have a lot of things to
JP, don't go.
So Owen was the closest one.
JP, stay.